Timmy Boach. And I
man.
do apologize for the foul language today. But, we'll try to nip that in the bud the rest of the way. Dude, how about Timmy Boach, kid? The barbarian, the Mainer. I mean, you got to say at this point he's an overachiever, right? He wrestled in college, Lock Haven University in Pennsylvania, I believe, 4 years, started at 285 pounds. Now here he is, at least a dozen UFC wins at this point. He's finished his last 4 wins. He looks to be in tremendous shape. Obviously, he's a hard guy to put away. He's had a lot of highlights, and to win a bonus here and look this good at 36 years old against a former champion and say what you want about Johny Hendricks, and we will, good for Timmy Boach.
Dude, I mean, I tell you what, he's not the most technical guy in the world, but he's one of the toughest guys in the world. I just love the technique that he's been using it for a very long time, but he was using that toe to just drive into the lower body of Johny Hendricks. He kept driving those toes into his body repeatedly, and then he was switching up by going high and catching Johny Hendricks, and then from the clinch, Tim Boach, if he has you hurt, he's going to get you out of there. Simple as that. That's exactly what he did against Hendricks. It's funny. Obviously, we did the podcast last week. I thought Hendricks was going to be able to get the win here. When I heard that he didn't make weight and that he potentially had a fever or whatever it was, he was dealing with the weight problem, I immediately switched my pick to Tim Boach. It just, it's not a good sign when you get a fighter who's been around a very long time. He's a former champion, and he's missing weight, and he doesn't look the same. He's not performing with that same kind of passion. And it's just, this is too dangerous of a sport. If you don't love what you do, if you don't love fighting, you shouldn't be in the game. And I feel like Johny Hendricks doesn't love fighting anymore. And if you're facing a beast like Tim Boach, it's just a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what it was. Boach went out there, took him out in the very first round, and made Hendricks look like he kind of didn't belong in there. Simple as that.
So Johny Hendricks misses weight for the 4th time in his UFC career, and certainly there was more venom directed his way for this one, I would think, than any other, in large part because he, no pun intended, moved up a weight class to middleweight. And I feel like people are really intolerant of this in mixed martial arts. And I know his fellow fighters are pretty intolerant of it, Kenny, because I think they feel like the number one thing when it comes to professionalism as a mixed martial arts athlete is making weight, right? It's almost like the most unprofessional thing you can do for the promoter, for your opponent, for yourself, for the career trajectory in that division is to miss weight and to lose the fight before the fight that happens the day before the fight. So, and as far as your picks are concerned, I would think on this show you should certainly reserve the right with a circumstance like this. I mean, you got boots on the ground telling you he's got a fever too, right? Like I would think you should reserve the right to change your pick in a situation like this where, and we saw the betting line, Kenny, move decidedly towards Tim Boach, and a lot of sharp money obviously cashed on Boach in that situation. So, I mean, you're obviously pretty intolerant of this, as most people are.
It's like showing up for work. Just freaking show up for work, man. Get there at 9 a.m. Make sure you show up to work. That's it. That's all you have to do. And I don't understand it. If weight cutting has been a part of his life since he was probably 5 or 6 years old, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. He knows how to do it. He's done it before. He knows what he needs to do to get his weight in order. He knows what's not a good weight to be at before fight week. And that's just it boggles my mind. But at the same time, when you have cut weight for that long, it gets old. It gets stale. You don't want to do it anymore. You just want to have a freaking burger. And if Hendricks wants to do that, then he should just retire. Obviously, I'm sure there's bills he needs to pay and all that stuff. But perhaps he needs to do something else. I mean, he could be a wrestling coach probably at any university in the country. You know what I mean? There's other things he could do, but don't go out there and risk getting injured badly, especially at middleweight. He's not a middleweight. Let's be honest. He's a welterweight.
Right. And he said during fight week, I'm never going to weigh less than 180 pounds as long as I live, and in a fighting setting, I can't afford to give up 20% of my purse. So I have no choice but to not sign welterweight bout agreements, right, in so many words, and then he went out and missed at middleweight. So unfortunate for Johny Hendricks. It seems like he just mismanaged the final few hours. We were hearing sort of that he was cutting weight and then he was eating a lot, and I don't even know. But ultimately, he doesn't make weight, and then the fight doesn't go his way. So good for Tim Boetsch there. All right, that brings us to Felice Herrig. And you talk about wanting to put the focus on the right thing. I mean, we should certainly keep it on this win over Justine Kish, who came in undefeated. Granted, only had 6 pro fights, but Felice Herrig, man, 3 wins in a row. The last 2 as underdog against Alexa Grasso and a much slighter underdog here against Justine Kish. But her mean streak is back. She's not over-respecting opponents. She looks outstanding, and if you would have told me after she lost to Paige Van Zandt in 2015 that she would all of a sudden be this relevant 2 years later, and someone who I would want to see face the likes of Rose Namajunas and Claudia Gadelha and, of course, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, I would have said, I just don't see it. Felice Herrig, all the rage right now, and rightfully so after the big win over the weekend.
I mean, Justine Kish is a beast, man. I mean, she is a world champion in Muay Thai, very dangerous striker, strong as hell in the clinch. I mean, she was doing a lot of things that were completely wrong, but she was getting away with giving Felice a tough time because of how strong she was, you know? So, but in the end, it was Felice Herrig, just too much technique. But more than anything else, this is the Felice Herrig I think that we all expected, to show up in the octagon. And we didn't always see that, especially early on when she came off of The Ultimate Fighter. I think she got her in her own head. She had a lot of mental hurdles, I think, that were preventing her from being the fighter that she can be. And I think she truly showed her potential against Kish. She was all over her. Very dominant performance. She didn't get down on herself when she wasn't able to finish that very tight rear naked choke, or when she was in the dominant positions. When she did lose position, she just kept flowing with it, which was nice to see. I think this is one of those fights that gives a fighter a lot of confidence, knowing you can go a hard 15 minutes, and you get frustrated during the fight, but you keep pushing through. So that's definitely some much-needed experience for Herrig, and it was a good win. Definite solid win against an undefeated opponent.
Yeah, you hit on all of it. I mean, her coaches, as I said in the post-fight interview, have to just be thrilled, to take on someone that strong and do everything in your power to seemingly finish them. And the finish didn't come, and therefore I don't think the post-fight bonus did, but nearly had her out of there with that rear naked choke. And I actually, Kenny, had a high-placed UFC producer ask me, are you guys going to talk about the fact that Justine Kish, pooped her pants fighting off a submission in the octagon? Are you going to talk about that on the podcast? And I asked you this question on Monday. I said, were you prepared to talk about it today? But now you know that question was coming, right? But in terms of the context of this fight and putting it in a framework historically as to whether or not this has happened in the UFC before, you're damn right we got to talk about it. I don't know what it speaks to other than Kish's toughness. Maybe it speaks to the weight cut. And Justine Kish, Kenny said how strong she is. This is a very hard cut down to 116 pounds for Justine Kish. So, Ken Flo, you know the anatomy and the human body and nutrition pretty well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if she's dieting a bunch and then loading up on food, whatever she's ingesting, should I be surprised that this doesn't happen more inside the octagon, given what you all put yourselves through with that inconvenient truth, cutting the weight and putting it back on?
I love that we're talking about this, dude.
Oh, we are.
Listen, it does happen. I mean, we've seen it. Tim Sylvia, I believe, did it against Asuero Silva. Yoel Romero did it. Right. So it does happen. It's a very unfortunate thing. When I fought Shaolin just recently in a jiu-jitsu match in Abu Dhabi, and I had the norovirus, and for anyone who's had the norovirus knows what I'm talking about. But it's absolutely brutal. That was honestly a fear of mine. So I definitely feel for Kish, but she was very open and honest about it. She went and said, yeah, I did. What do you want me to do? Of course, it happens. So shit happens, but she must be really down in the dumps at this point. And her takedown defense kind of crapped out on her, but she did leave her mark in the cage, John. So that's good. Yeah.
That's good. Really, that's nice.
Shitty situation.
Yes. That's good. So you were getting that on Monday. See, you are getting some things that we did not feature in Monday's podcast, and you'll never know if I'm lying or not because that audio heretofore does not exist. So big win for Felice Herrig, and very happy with her. She lost her brother, it was a long time ago, but the last time she fought Alexa Grasso, it was very close to the anniversary of that passing, and she's just been through a lot, and just exciting that she is now a bona fide contender, not just a ranked contender, but very relevant now at 115 pounds.